Hello, everybody. My name is Liz Voda. I am an instruction and outreach librarian here at the Thompson Library. Today, we're going to be talking about doing a webinar on our research skills refresh series. On the topic today is staying organized. I am recording this session, so if you have any questions, please feel free to pop those in the chat, and I will check them kind of periodically to make sure that I'm answering them. I'll also save time at the very end to go back through everything. All right. So because we have a kind of wide range of people who signed up, we have undergraduates, graduates, staff, and faculty who all signed up. So I tried to make this as kind of universal as possible. So some of the things that I'm going to talk about today might be applicable to you. Some of them may not be. All right. But we're going to start off talking about time blocking. We're going to go into when you're actually searching for literature, searching for research and other things, how to kind of keep organized with that. We're going to talk a little bit about data management and kind of staying organized during the middle of a research process. And then finally, we're going to talk about, just basically how you kind of develop a strategy that works for you. Okay. So starting off with time blocking, this is something that anybody can kind of implement. But basically, it is a practice in where you schedule out each part of your day to give yourself a set time to kind of work undisturbed, okay? Or to make sure that you are taking breaks or eating lunch, or that you only have a set time for meetings and this kind of thing. It can be very helpful if you are one of those people that kind of is quote unquote multitasking all the time, or like flitting between one thing and another and never really seeming to get anything done, or really kind of focus for a long time on kind of one project. What's nice about this is that, again, you have this set aside time, and there's also these integrations within Google Calendar, which we all have through our university accounts, that allows you to help add these focus times into a schedule. Maybe not as detailed as this one. We'll get into why I do it, but I don't do it all the time in a little bit. Versus scheduling events for yourself. So there are these couple things built into Google's Calendar that will help you with this. So I'm going to bring in, for example, my calendar. So momentarily here. Okay, so you'll notice that on the screen here, that I have a very busy week this week and then leading into next. Okay, so you may kind of be aware that, like, when you actually start to schedule an event here, if you do a single click, it comes up with this time where you have some options of different types of events or appointments that you can set up within Google. Okay. If you actually do like a double click, it'll automatically say you want an event, right? An event is somewhere where you can like add video conferencing, you can add a location, you can add guests, you can have multiple notifications, add files and everything to a specific time. Okay. This is something that a lot of us are familiar with. But if you want to see these light pink areas that I've shown, where it's like I'm preparing for a webinar, I blocked out some time for lunch for myself tomorrow, right? Because I have a very busy schedule. These are called focus times. They've got the cute little headphone icon too. And so again, if you do a single click as an event, or you can go over to create and say, I want to do some focus time, you can do that here. So it's kind of, focus events are a little bit stripped down, or I'm sorry, focus times are a little bit stripped down from an event, right? So you don't see anywhere where you can add a guest, right? You can't really add anybody in there, but you will see that it does some things automatically. So for example, it will say if you're one of those people who has their email up all the time and are constantly using Google Chat, it will automatically set your kind of status in your email to do not disturb, and it's going to mute any chat notifications. Okay. It will also automatically decline meetings for you. And you can say, it could be just maybe only new meetings, or it could be new and existing meetings, and it will send out a a message to the person who's trying to set up a meeting with you that I am declining because I'm preparing for a conference, right? Or whatever, you can actually edit this. So because I'm preparing for a webinar, for example, okay? You can add some rooms or location. You can also add in some attachments and things. And you can even set the default visibility to this. So if you share your calendar with someone, or if someone is searching for your calendar in theirs to see, what your availability is, you could actually, make this keep the default visibility. So for example, mine is you can only see that I'm busy, not exactly what I'm doing. If you set this to public, though, it'll actually show kind of the description of what is up here. So focus time for webinar, for example, okay? And then it'll ask you like what time and date. So we're going to switch this over to tomorrow in the 4 to 5 p.m. time, right? So it's automatically, you can kind of see where it's putting in here, and it will save this. And it says, yes, don't add any more meetings for me during this time, okay? I like to do this when, and you'll see that I actually did a little test during this. So when I had my personal Gmail try to schedule an event with me while I have this kind of prep time set aside, it automatically sent back a rejection, and it automatically, like, to that account, it automatically crossed it out, said, nope, don't want this on my account, or don't want this, you can't. And if I look at the email that I kind of see, it'll automatically say, no, I'm not going to be able to make it. So this is a nice kind of automated way to keep yourself and your focus time separate. The reason why I like this is because if someone, so for example, on Friday here, I have a scheduled meeting out from 1 to 3, but then again, I tried to do a test event and tried to schedule a meeting, and it did. So I would have to go in here and say, actually, no, I can't make this, and do the declining myself, okay? Now, you'll notice that I don't have this kind of time blocking set for myself every single day, right? I tend to find it a little time consuming to do it every week. And also my schedule needs to be flexible because I often have students who are going to try to make appointments with me basically any time during the day, right? That's part of my job, is to be available to students. So I don't necessarily use it, but this week and starting next week, when I have some large projects and like a really busy schedule on Monday, I'm like, no, I need to set aside an hour to eat lunch. No one can talk to me, for this week. I really need to kind of set this time aside. So this is one of those time blocking is one of those things that I use when I need to. Okay. You can use it all the time. We saw that lovely example with the entire week blocked out with focus time or meetings or whatever. So it's kind of use it to the best of your ability. And if you don't need to use it all the time, then don't use it all the time, right? The other thing on Google Calendar that I like to use, especially to kind of remind myself of due dates, or to it's basically a digital to-do list, is called tasks. Okay. It is embedded in both your email. So if I go into my email and over on the side, you'll see I've got my calendar kind of set up here, but I also can add in tasks here and actually set myself due dates. So if I wanted to say I needed to get my peers certification renewed, for example, and I can automatically, set it for today or tomorrow. I can add in details. So maybe if I wanted to go grab a link or something out to that, I can do that. I can also, set a time. So maybe I need to do this by Friday, and we'll just give myself a little bit of grace here and say Friday by 4:30. Okay. And in this case, I have it set up in tasks to kind of order by date. I can star things. I could, like, by the order that I've put them in here. I could also delete all the completed tasks because they should be kind of shown down here. I've got 30 tasks that I've completed in the recent past, right? These will also show up in your calendar. So over on my Google Calendar here, you'll notice that in the My Calendar section over here on the left side of the screen, under any calendar that I've created for myself or for a shared calendar and stuff, there's this little tasks icon, and that's just what's checked. So you'll see that I've got a task here set for next Friday the 14th. And then you'll also see that I've got a couple of coming up here as well. And it's really not a lot on these. It's just the kind of information about what this task is. I can also mark it completed, for example. And then it will kind of cross out like I did for this one that I on Monday. The one downside to tasks is that can be hidden very easily, right? So if we're on our calendars here, I can just uncheck tasks and it goes away, right? It's not there. There also isn't, as far as I can tell, a way to set a notification for this so that I can, so it's really just a visual reminder if I'm looking at my calendar or if I'm looking at that section on my Gmail, right? So if this is kind of hidden away and I don't have anything here, I'm not seeing it. So that's something to think about when you're considering this. Now, if time blocking and also the task seems a little bit onerous, because it can be, one of the things that you can do just with your events coming up is actually add multiple excuse me. One of the things you can do is to actually add multiple reminders to yourself that are kind of embedded in this. So for example, if I want to, I've got this upcoming meeting with a webinar on Friday about checking sources for credibility, you can add additional notifications here. So I've got one that's set 10 minutes beforehand, right? But I could also say, oh, I, need make sure that I'm a day before this so that I'm making sure that my slides are all put together, that I've got everything prepped. But you can add notifications, weeks in advance. So if I needed to, we're going to actually go back here so I don't mess this one up too much. But for next week, for example, if I wanted to add in another one here, I could do that and kind of set it up weeks in advance. Or if I know I have a conference coming up or a big presentation coming up and I want to have multiple reminders being either sent to my email or sent to my phone, I can do that within here. Okay, so that's kind of time blocking and just creating a schedule for yourself while you're doing research and staying organized with, your job, your classes, but also setting aside those times that you can focus. And again, maybe this is something that you want to do for homework and projects that you're working on. Maybe you run quarterly reports once a month. Maybe you need to set aside lab time that you don't want to be disturbed in, or anything that's conflicting with it. So it is a very useful tool across the board, no matter what your role at the university is. So the second section here is we're going to talk about a little bit when you're actually doing literature searching in the library databases, or just in general, trying to find sources to support your research. One of the best practices to start off with is keeping a research log for yourself. And this is a way that you can track your research question, the kind of query that you're looking at, but it also will help you keep track of what search terms you are using as you are finding these resources, where you were searching, and also finding those sources and kind of keeping them in a file. So going over to the library's homepage here, pardon me, we have some examples set up through the library automatically. So under research help here, we have this research process guide. And there is on the very top front page, stay organized. And we have two different versions of this. So one is based on either a Google or an Excel sheet, depending on what program you like to use. The other one is set as either a Google Doc or a research log as a Word file. So again, depending on how your brain works, you might gravitate towards one or the other. I'm actually going to stick with the Excel sheet just because there's some, and I'll show this in a minute, there's some applications from our databases that will actually export results into things like an Excel file pretty easily. So if you click on, say, the Google Sheet, we've set it up so that it makes a copy and puts it into your drive, right? So you're not editing the copy that everybody sees when they download this, but it makes a copy automatically. And within this, you'll see kind of an example of like where to put your research questions, the initial search terms that you're going to kind of pull out from this. So if I'm looking for research about hypertension, and maybe, so I'm going to do hypertension or high blood pressure, and maybe I want to combine that with something like an age range or some other population, so maybe African Americans or white people, something like that. And we actually have an example of what these kind of questions and terms look like. So you'll see that I've got this set up so that it's vaping and e-cigarettes or Juul or electronic cigarettes, but we don't want to talk about marijuana, for example, right? And we're looking for things dealing with teenagers, teens, adolescents, but not maybe adults. Addiction and or dependency or frequency. Okay, so it's kind of an example here. Then you come to the blank log. And all this does is you should be typing in here your kind of main terms or concepts that you're coming through. And then you've got a space to put that citation for the source, especially a good link and a link back to that source so that you can find it again. Notes on how it relates to your topic. How are you intending to kind of use it? Is there a certain section in your project? And then even spaces for, some note taking. So paraphrases, quotations, this kind of thing. I like this because, you would be able to sort within this pretty easily, as well as, again, my brain just kind of works within a spreadsheet pretty well. But there is like this example log here that kind of shows you what this would look like if I'd actually kind of, if I was actually using it for a project going forward, okay? The other way we have this is actually a Word file. So if you download the Excel or the Word document, it just goes in your downloads folder, and then you'd open it up, either in, Microsoft 365, or I have the desktop version of Word here. And it looks pretty similar, or it's the same, it's a similar concept to the Excel sheet that we're looking at, but you've got your research questions. You have kind of a place to use those search terms combining with the Boolean operators, the database operators, and or and not, and then a place to, again, start adding citations with those notes underneath. So this concept between the two is the same. It just kind of it will depend on what format you like or you prefer. And again, these are just suggestions. If you end up not liking either and kind of want to develop your own, that's fine. So let me show you and why I actually kind of like the Excel sheet a little bit better. So when you're going into a database, and we'll just pick this one from EBSCO, if I am looking for, I think I'm in, let me double make sure. I'm in Psych Info. Okay, so if I was doing a research paper in psychology about depression and teenager, and we'll just do talk therapy. Okay. If I do a search for this, we definitely get a lot of results that come up right away. And as I'm collecting these things, I should be, downloading the full text. I should be doing a lot of other kind of work to make sure they come back to it. But one thing I can do, instead of doing that individually one by one, is that most of our databases will allow you to kind of put in multiple results into either like a folder and I'll show you PubMed in a second here, and it will let you kind of select items at the same time. And then within this little folder up here, I will be able to either export it in a certain way. So I could export it to a citation manager, which we'll talk about in a second. But I can also export it to something like a CSV file, which is the kind of generic version of an Excel file, right? And you'll see that there are some other options here for other types of citation managers, so like RefWorks versus EasyBib, those kind of things. But you'll notice that there isn't anything to export it as just like a Word document or a rich text file, okay? But if I save this, again, it's going to open up in my downloads folder, and I will bring it over here. And it comes in and it gives me the article title, who the author is, the journal title, publication date, page numbers, the DOI. There should be over here a little bit farther a permalink, a p-link. So again, if you're, especially if you're only really looking in a particular database, PsycInfo, PubMed, Web of Science, something like this, you can adapt this for a research log because it is bringing in all that information that you need. Okay. Now, I will say that not every database will export all of these same fields, right? So if we go into PubMed here and again do depression and teenagers, and let's do those two for right now. Doesn't make a whole lot of difference. So you'll again see that we can, kind of click and select multiple articles here. PubMed will even want you to won't have that folder in it. It just has those kind of check marks here. But up the top, you can actually do a couple of things. So you can save these as a certain file. So you've got 3 in the selection. I could also do all the results entirely, which is 96,000. I do not suggest doing that with a search this large. I could just do all the results on this page. So again, we go the top 10 or 20 that are coming through here. Or I could just do my selection. And I can also put these out in a summary text. So PubMed does allow a rich text file. It also allows for that CSV. And just to give you an idea about what this looks like, pull it in here. And again, so it's here and it gives you that PubMed ID number, the title, the created date, a DOI back to it, first author, second journal titles, publication dates, that kind of thing. So maybe not as robust as that issue from Psych articles, but pretty similar. Okay. Now, this is great to kind of like keep track of the searches as you're finding them, but it doesn't really help you actually save the articles or save the articles or like create a bibliography or anything like that. Okay. That's where, creating a file folder system that works well for you within like your Google Drive or a shared drive will be really important. We're going to talk about that coming in with data management in a second. But it will also be helpful if you start using what's called a citation manager. Now, get back on the library's website here, again, under research help. We do have information about citation tools on the research guide under research process guide, excuse me, under cite and track sources. We also have a page that is completely dedicated just to citation tools. This will have information about the kind of 2 citation managers that we have supported in the library. Going forward, we're going to be focusing on Zotero mainly. EndNote, the version of EndNote online that we have free access to is not very robust. It doesn't have a lot of the functionality. So we are kind of pivoting towards Zotero a lot more because it is a free option and also is just a little bit more robust in some of what it offers. So in addition to this, you do have, access to style guides and help with that. And then on the Zotero, after that initial overview page, you do also see some additional help. So we've got some video tutorials. We have recorded webinars. We are going to continue to have live sessions as well coming up about this. So I'm not going to be able to get all that into Zotero too much, but I'll give you an example of what it looks like here. So I've downloaded the program Zotero to my computer, my desktop. Again, this is completely free. and you can add extra storage for PDFs and that kind of thing for a fairly reasonable price. I think adding the unlimited amount of data, like you can get a couple of different levels, but the unlimited data is $120 a year. So that's roughly $10. That is $10 a month, actually. So it's fairly reasonable, in my opinion. Okay. But within Zotero, you can see it that I've got quite a few different sources that are here. I have organized them by different projects that I'm working on. So for example, I was helping a professor look for some archaeology books that he could use for students. There are some different activities or modules or classes that I'm working on. I'm trying to keep those all together. So you can add these into folders. You also have the ability to add tags to a lot of these things. So I'm saying, okay, for these crap activities that I work on with students in classes, which is about source evaluation, nothing to do with feces, I promise. But I want to find all the ones that I found about food that I tagged as food desert, because that's what we're going to be talking about, right? I can pull those through. And then from here, you'll see if I click on one of these, it gives me information. All the citation information is here. So who the title is, the author, URL back to it. I can add in attachments here. So if I did actually want to add a linked file, it gives me kind of a snapshot of this website, but I could add a file here. I can also add notes in here. So, when did I bring this in? What purpose is it serving in my project? All of that kind of stuff is here as well. So again, I really enjoy Zotero because it has all of this additional kind of options that you can use as well. And that's about as far in depth as I can get in here. But again, the full webinar that I've either recorded, or if you want to attend an upcoming live session, I go through with, how to add things into Zotero, how to set up an account, how to get citations out of an account into a bibliography, all of that good stuff. We actually do format or do cover in our webinars that are coming up. Okay. So yes, this is all that information about Zotero. So again, using a citation manager, there are a few others that are out there. Mendeley is one. RefWorks is one that we had at the library for a while. We no longer support it because it was so they did a redesign and a refresh, and it got really clunky really fast. So again, Zotero is the one that you'll hear most of us about, but there are others out there. So if you're not a fan of Zotero or you are paying for the full version of EndNote, please feel free. Again, they all kind of have that same same kind of functionality for the most part. Okay. All right, so let's talk about data management. Now, when I talk about data management, sometimes that is, you're actually doing experiments and you're getting results out and you have to kind of collect those. But it could also be that you're on a club. You're a student on a club and you need to kind of create different publicity flyers or sign-in sheets, or just even keeping notes and agendas and stuff. All of that is data, right, about your club. So keeping, whether it's, an academic project, whether it's a personal one, trying to kind of create what's called a data management plan to establish those standards will help you stay organized, because in these data management plans, they're going to be agreed on by the whole team that you're working with. It's going to make you kind of think about the different file types that you're using, what your folder structure will look like within a shared drive, or if it's in a personal drive, as well as, if you are doing a full academic research, maybe, where is this data going to live after the project is done? Okay. And it also talks about, naming conventions for your files and your folders, where this information is saved, all that kind of stuff. We actually had a webinar about this, and at the end, I'll kind of show you our YouTube channel where most of this stuff is, as well as other places that you can find it on the website. But if you're doing a really formal project, we have a tool through the library that's called DMP tool that's going to walk you through the steps to actually help you kind of format the data management plan, which actually a lot of funding organizations actually ask for these now because of some of the mandates by the government. Now, how long that will last, who knows? We'll see. But on the library's homepage, you can search in the databases, quick search up here. You could also go over to the A to Z list, but either way, you're going to type in DMP tool. Oh, hold on. Maybe it's not on the I'm sorry, it's not on the database list. Forget I said that. All right, so it is on under faculty resources, under services and resources for faculty. You're going to go down to publishing and activity, and down under publishing resources here, you will, or research tools, excuse me, you'll see DMP tool. I will try to get this added in as a database so that you can find it more easily. But this is where it is right now. You could also just go to dmptool.org and it will pop up this way. But in here, you're going to log in, and because we are at the University of Michigan, you're going to use your @UMich address, and it's going to prompt the single sign-on, which I already signed in today. You'll see that you'll be able to look at other people's DMP tools that are here. You'll notice that some of them have this template already. So for the NIH, for the NSF, these really formal plans that you can look at, even like the Arctic Data Center, which is an NSF program, right? So there's some templates that have been updated here. You can create a plan off the bat. It will ask you a lot of information about who's on your team, how you're kind of looking for this. So let's take a look at one that I was working on a few years ago here. So it's got the project title, research domain, start and stop dates. If there's a funder, for example, who your collaborators are, and having that kind of information there. It talks about actually writing the plan. So what the roles and responsibilities are of each person on the team, the types of data that you're coming up with, right? So is it going to be images? Is it going to be data points in a spreadsheet, right? How are those going to be shared and stored, right? So are they going to be collected in a Dropbox? Are they going to meet safe computing requirements? All of that kind of stuff. It takes you through step by step, and it actually does look and show some guidance here for the different stages as well. Okay. And you go all the way up through, and you could actually like download the completed section of this too. So this is one of those that is really a formal structure. It does not have to be this formal, right? Especially if you are maybe staff and you're just trying to organize your department's folders, right? And shared drives. Or if you're a student and you just kind of want to do this for yourself for a larger project that you're having through the semester, even just sitting down and creating what's called a README file is useful, okay? So I've got an example here, and this is like a file that I would save within a folder or within my drive that would then explain everything else that's happening in that folder. Okay, so this is the README for a shared drive that we've got going on. We have a little table of contents. We talk about the purpose of the drive, right? So it sets the folder and file naming standard for this drive. All file and where should they be housed, right? All files should be placed in those appropriate folders except for this document, okay? Talks about naming conventions for your folders, right? There shall be no more than 3 levels of nested folders, okay? Talks about the types of files that you're looking on. So in this case, we're going to be working all in Google projects, right? So that we can be collaborative and kind of keep things together. We're going to kind of set a standard for image files as a PNG file, and then final drafts are as PDFs, okay? So again, this is kind of this agreement that you set up at the beginning, or again, if things start to get unruly, taking the time to go back to this to make sure that you're following these standards that you've set is a good idea, okay? And there are README files that actually are used for other things. So if, again, going back to that kind of really formal example of published research, this is attached. This is from the Deep Blue Data site. This is a data set that was deposited by our own Lanre Lugo, Professor Lugo. And this is about some of his research that's been going on. And he actually had to submit a README about the data that he's sharing that talks about what the research was, what the methodology was, what the files contain, also what the columns are in those files so that it can be readable by other researchers too, okay? So again, could be as formal as this, could be a little bit more informal, especially for, a student project or kind of a shared project that you're working on that may not necessarily be going out to being published, okay? All right. I will, at this point in time, show you guys how to get to the, where we go? So if you guys, I've been referencing a bunch of these recorded webinars that, again, this webinar is being recorded. But if you need to get there, it's all on our YouTube channel. So from the library's homepage, you can go down to video tutorials and this will pop up our YouTube channel, but I think I've got it open already. And again, some of the ones that you are probably going to be looking for are going to be in these recorded webinars. So for example, in our Citation Station webinars, this talks about Zotero and some of the other things that we're working on. In Essential Skills, we have things talking about Gmail and the calendar and some of the things that in Google Drive, how to set this up, and even in Zoom, okay? Pardon me. And then the other one that I'll point out with that you are probably, that's really relevant with this webinar is this project management and publishing webinar. So we have in here information about finding grants, but also talking about Deep Blue. So we're a data repository, for example. We had an entire webinar this past fall that talks about managing your data for larger projects and writing that data management plan, as well as tracking your scholarly output. So if you are publishing, if you are presenting at conferences, what you can do to get that a little bit, publicize that a little bit more, make sure that all of your work is attributed to yourself in things like Google Scholar and using like an ORCID ID and other things like that. Okay, so our YouTube channel is, again, got a lot of information in here, and highly suggest, looking for these recorded webinars as well as other tutorials that we have set up here, okay? Back to our regularly scheduled program. Now is the time to kind of develop a strategy that works for you, right? So I mentioned earlier that my brain works really well looking at kind of organized tables of information a la spreadsheets. So when I'm kind of pulling things together with a research log, I'm going to be using the spreadsheet version, but that is not the case for everybody, right? So it may take some trial and error to kind of develop a system that works well for you sometimes, but things to just think about overall that you're going to be looking on is something that does not take up too much of your time, right? If you go ahead and try the time blocking that I showed earlier, and you are spending hours and hours just trying to set up your schedule for the week or the next 2 weeks, that's too much, okay? So maybe you only use it when you need to. Is low cost, right? There's so many different productivity apps that are out there. Some of them are free, some of them aren't, but there's a lot of things that you have access to already, right? Like I just talked about using Google Scholar or Google Calendar and the tasks that are set in there. Zotero is a free option for Citation Manager. Using, the things that you have in Drive already, you can probably create a system fairly well. Also, make it make sense for you and your project partners, right? If it's personal to you, you can do whatever. But if you're collaborating with other people, you kind of need to set the standards. The sooner the better, the earliest that you can within that project to make sure that it's working well. Now, if this was completely overwhelming, you're like, oh my God, I don't need all of this information, that's fine. Focus on the sections that you do need. But also if multiple things that I talked about in the session really resonated with you and you think might be helpful, try one at a time, right? Try it for a week or try time blocking for a week, see if it helps. If it keeps you more on task. Try Zotero to see if it helps you with that bibliography and kind of collecting those different references. Try a research log on your next paper to see if it keeps you kind of organized a little bit too. And again, continue to add on kind of these practices as we're going. Okay. All right, so again, finding help on the research process guide. That's where the research log is, information about Zotero. scholarly publishing and activity guide on the faculty guide that has information about the DMP toolkit. I'm going to try to get that in as a database too, so that it's a little bit easier to find. And then again, reaching out on our YouTube channel for any of those previously recorded webinars. So this is the time that I have for questions. So I'm going to pop in and see if anything came in chat, but I'm not seeing anything. But yeah, if anybody else has some questions that they want answers, please feel free to do that now. Otherwise, thank you for coming.
Thank you for watching this recorded webinar. Find upcoming webinars to register for at libcal.umflint.edu.